With 2022 almost done, it's worth taking a look back at some of my favorite tech from this year. And while I may focus on Apple gear, don't worry, it isn't only Apple products that made the cut. First up, the M2 MacBook Air. It may not be the major leap in performance the MacBook Air saw when it first got Apple Silicon, but the M2 Air brought the MacBook redesign to Apple's best-selling laptop. It saw the return of MagSafe, opening up one of the two USB-C ports when charging. It also saw the controversial introduction of the notch. While I certainly don't like the notch, and I wish it were smaller, it does allow the screen to reach close to the top of the laptop to provide a bit of extra screen real estate. The improved media engine could be great depending on your use case, and the larger row of function keys is nice to have. And, of course, you still have the MacBook Air's excellent battery life. While someone with an M1 Air might not find it worthwhile to upgrade, the improvements Apple brought to the Air continue to iterate on the excellent improvements they made with the switch to Apple Silicon. Next up isn't just one product, but rather a standard, the Matter standard. There aren't all too many products with support for it quite yet, but more and more will come, and many previous devices will be updated with support. The Matter smart home standard will make things simpler and more universally compatible. And Matter over Thread can reduce the number of smart home devices that have to communicate over your local Wi-Fi network. While HomeKit users are used to the simplicity of a QR code for pairing, with Matter, this simplicity will be brought to more devices and other voice assistants. As of now, there are an extremely limited number of device types supported on this standard, but these will continue to expand as it's updated. There are a ton of companies backing the standard, from Apple, Google, and Amazon to LG. We'll certainly see more from the companies backing Matter in the coming months, but for now, I'm just glad to see progress towards more interoperability in smart homes. Now, speaking of smart homes, this next piece of tech has been a really nice addition to mine, Aqara's Curtain Driver E1. There are other smart control options for curtains and blinds, but Aqara's solution is the one I have. It seems incredibly simple, and admittedly in most cases unnecessary, but I found it to be incredibly nice to have. I just attach the device to the curtain rod and use Aqara's hub to have it connected with HomeKit. I can control the curtains with my voice, either through an Echo device or through HomePods with Siri, and of course, you can control your curtains through automations. You don't have to get too complicated, but I have one that opens my curtains in the morning to let in light and wake me up, and another to make sure my curtains are closed in the evenings after the sun sets. Having automated curtains has been a way nicer addition to my smart home than I ever anticipated. This next piece of tech is one specific part of the iPhone 14 Pro. While I could easily talk about the device as a whole, this feature stood out to me: satellite connectivity. Now, I'm a huge spaceflight enthusiast and was ecstatic to see the satellite connectivity finally made its way to the iPhone this year, after being rumored for the 13 last year. Now, it clearly has some room to improve, and it won't replace cell towers providing data, but Apple's emergency SOS via satellite has a ton of potential when people are in most need of help. The ability to update your Find My location and reach out to emergency services make this a life-saving feature, and it is already proved to be just that. We may well see almost all 5G phones gain some basic calling features over satellite in the next year or two with SpaceX's T-Mobile partnership to provide cell signal from Starlink satellites, but that's a good way away. Apple's solution is here, and it's working now. Now, before I get into my final pick, there are a few honorable mentions that I have to speak about. First up, the Mac Studio. In March of this year, Apple released the higher-end desktop Mac, which can be optioned up to an M1 Ultra chip, basically two full M1 Max chips side by side. It starts with 32 gigs of RAM, and Apple's Studio display is made to go perfectly with it, with its 5K panel and built-in webcam. They're a great combination, but I ended up sticking with mostly portable devices this time around, otherwise it may have made my list. My other honorable mention I know would be at the top of Fernando's list, so I had to include it here for him, and that's extended monitor support on the iPad. While I don't use an iPad as my primary computer, Fernando does, and the ability to connect an external display and make full use of it extending the screen of the iPad is a major feature to make them more like fully fledged computers. Having extra screen real estate is extremely handy when trying to get work done, having multiple things on the screen at once, and Apple brought this improved support to iPad Pros with iPadOS 16 this year. With those two honorable mentions out of the way, I'll finish off with a device I would not have expected to put on this list before I used it, the Apple Watch Ultra. Now, depending on who you are, the Apple Watch Ultra may seem like a must-have upgrade to the Apple Watch, or an unnecessary waste of money with an extremely limited number of extra features. And either of those points of view is perfectly fair. If you aren't diving, putting your watch through the most extreme conditions while having it act as a dive computer, you aren't making the most out of it. But that doesn't mean you won't benefit from the Ultra. I chose the Apple Watch Ultra not for the diving features or extreme rugged capability, but for the much longer battery life. And I've loved it. I can easily get through multiple days on a charge without ever thinking about limiting my usage or charging. Even with the Apple Watch Series 8, I ended up disabling the always-on display to maximize battery life as much as possible. With the Apple Watch Ultra, I found that to be entirely unnecessary. I rarely set it on the charger long enough to fully charge, but you also don't need to. I've used the battery saving modes on a few occasions, but only when I wanted it to last beyond a weekend without charging it at all. That battery life is the biggest feature for me, and I bet for a lot of people. Now, it is admittedly a bulkier smartwatch than most, and the look of it is an entirely subjective matter, but the size hasn't been a problem for me, and I see the larger screen as a great step up from other watches. So, what do you think of my picks? Let me know your thoughts and what your favorite gear from this year is in the comments down below. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel for more from 9to5Mac.